I watch a lot of movies. I try to go to the theater as often as I can, and 2024 was no exception. We saw two completely different versions of the Chalamet. A bald, ugly vampire that still somehow has Riz, and so on and so forth. But for what's almost been a year now, there's only been one movie that I've thought of pretty much every single day. It's a movie that's been stuck in my head that I've just been replaying certain scenes of, and I've just been kind of digging in a little bit deeper. I haven't rewatched it since that first time I watched it in May, but it's just stuck with me for whatever reason. A movie that I can only describe as beautiful when speaking of it in terms of its visuals and its audio. Yet a movie that I am also fully willing to completely criticize for some issues that I have with dialogue, story, characters, things like that. But regardless, a movie that stuck with me nonetheless. And that film was Jane Schoenbrun's I Saw the TV Glow. This is quite the movie. Just by looking at its promotional material, its neon blues, pinks, purples, these are the things that drew me in. This was something that I assumed was gonna be a coming of age story for these kids growing up in the 90s, and then there was this TV show that they just became so attached to. I didn't know about what I was going in for, what this actually was gonna be about, and that this wasn't gonna be just a really simple point A to point B storyline, that this was gonna be a lot more impactful in a way. I feel like a lot of people felt like that because the reality is the tone that this movie carries throughout all of its runtime is, in my opinion, this feverish nostalgia, where it has those elements of that coming of age story that you might have been expecting, but it's a little bit more pessimistic than you were to initially expect. The suburbia of this world is in decay. These characters are locked in their own minds. They're in their perpetual state of solitude. It's weird. The whole environment is weird. The premise is that Owen and Maddie, these two teenagers, find this TV show called The Pink Opaque. They watch it every week. It's this horror show that's reminiscent of like those 90s ones that you would see. And while I didn't grow up in the 90s, I still remember reruns of things like this, like, you know, Goosebumps. But going forward, at one point, Maddie just up and disappears, and everyone's knowledge of the Pink Opaque and what that was is gone. What follows is a story that just keeps you asking questions as to what is reality and how these characters are actually gonna make it through. But first, let me talk about the main reasons as to why I adore a lot of parts of this film, and again, that is gonna be with the visuals. The neon aesthetic of this, how beautiful everything is shot in this film. I've very rarely seen any film carry the same level of style. And it's really helped out by how the story is paced, because these shots are at sometimes drawn out. They just make you feel like you're in that moment, in that time, and that helps out for a lot of the film. In the very beginning, you get the most nostalgic feeling thing in the world if you were a kid that grew up in like the late 90s, maybe the 2000s, and that's that little thing with the like carpet or that rug that gets like put up in the air and that creates like a little air pocket. That thing, I feel like I wasn't really expecting to ever see that ever since elementary school. But shots like those in the movie theater just made me just kind of sit back and just sit there kind of like in awe. I wasn't expecting a film like this to be such a visual spectacle. And throughout it all, there's these shades of color that are just permeating through every single scene. That purple, pink, that blue, they keep shining on, and it still adds on to that dreamy, kind of like fuzzy feeling that's going on in the back of your head. It's there the entire time. And of course, we gotta talk about the music, because without the music, these scenes wouldn't hit nearly as hard. I gotta give so much props to the score, to the musicians that were included in this. I mean, look at this. Alex G, Sandy themselves, they're the person that made the musical score. And for a film that has these feelings of nostalgia and like this suburban place, I couldn't really think of a better musician to actually score this film. Alex G, for the last decade, has been one of my favorite musicians ever. And that's funny because me saying that about Alex G isn't the last time I'm gonna be saying that about musicians or artists that were included while making this film. The rest of the soundtrack is completely mesmerizing. That opening scene with them going underneath that multicolor blanket while Anthems of a 17-year-old is playing, it's just completely special. I wish that I could see that scene for the first time all over again. I don't know why, but it elicited such a completely visceral reaction from me that I almost wanted to tear up. I don't know why, so early on, it resonated with me that heavily. But the way that they picked out their music in this is just sublime. I don't know how or who really decided to put what song fits where, but my God, they did a fantastic job. And something that I have to really commend this soundtrack for doing is for introducing me to one of my new favorite artists of all time, Caroline Polachek, with Starburned and Unkissed being one of my most played songs of all of last year. I feel like somehow, someway, I'm always gonna find some place to play this song. After watching the movie, looking up who Caroline was one of the first things that I did while I walked out of the movie theater, and then I became engrossed with her entire library. She is stellar, and also led me to, you know, become engrossed in a ton of other musical events that were happening that year, kind of like, you know, maybe Brat Summer.
Down 999, it's a good time. Who the fuck are you? I'm a brat when I'm bumping that.
But nonetheless, still, the music in this is fantastic, and that's not even scratching the surface of everything that was here. I mean, you've got Phoebe Bridgers, you've got Snail Mail, you've got a ton of stuff in this. Music seems to be one of the biggest backbones in this entire movie. If you love soundtracks that are just completely stylistic, give you this amazing atmosphere, this mood, you're gonna love this movie, or at least love this part of this movie. It's right up there with a ton of other soundtracks in media that I deem to be some of the best 10 out of 10 kind of sources for this kind of thing. Other pieces of media that I put up here on amazing soundtracks have to be Scott Pilgrim and Life is Strange, the first one. Those have to be in my Mount Rushmore of favorite soundtrack with such varied artists like these. And this easily just slides right into that category. So visually, this is a stunning movie. When it comes to the music, it is a beautiful movie. But why, like I said in the beginning, do I have some issues with this film? Well, I would say it comes in the form of, I don't know, some decisions that were probably made when it came to how these characters act, the dialogue itself. It's just janky in a weird way. Like I mentioned previously, the best way to describe this movie's tone is like this fever dream that you're living in. You're living in this dream and you're expecting to wake up in a cold sweat. So a ton of things. Visually, it looks like this, and also when it comes to the dialogue, it has that same kind of feeling to it. Justice Smith, who plays Owen in this movie, has his character be this kind of whiny protagonist that goes throughout this entire story with like this really quiet voice, which is obviously the direction that the directors and staff wanted to go with. Because come on, Justice Smith by themselves, this isn't the only way that they can act. I've seen Dungeons and Dragons. They can definitely do a lot more. So this really toned down, more whiny kind of personality. This is what they really wanted. And for me, after a while, it definitely felt a little bit draining. It's like that thing when you're in a dream and you're unable to do some sort of thing, like whether it be running or whether it be like saying the certain phrase. It's kind of like that. You're stuck and you're just watching this person and you're thinking to yourself, why can't you just do that? I don't know. To me, it felt like I was just stuck thinking that. And when it comes to the dialogue, yeah, that's something that I also have a little bit of issue with, because the best way that I can describe that is that this feels like it's some sort of like Wattpad energy. This is dialogue that is very cringy at times and sometimes very much pretentious.
And then surprise, surprise, 11th grade comes around and suddenly it's been her lifelong dream to join the cheer squad. Ugh.
And it's kind of like it's supposed to be that way. I feel like this would be something that I would easily see in early 2000s to 2010 Tumblr. I would just be able to go on and just see these people just talk about everything with the most importance in the world, but the things that they're saying are just kind of dumb out of context. And I don't mean to say that I think that the story is dumb. Not at all. I'm not saying that. But sometimes at the most pivotal moments of the entire story, like when Maddie is giving a speech closer to the end of the film, it's such an emotional speech. You feel every word that she says, but you just sometimes can't help to maybe like giggle or chuckle to yourself because these words are just a little bit not as serious.
I pissed and I shit my pants.
The story, whether intentional or not, has a bit of a bad habit of wanting to not sound natural. And that's why I can't say that I hate this part of the film, because I think it's intentionally done to make you feel unease and uncomfortable. And when we're talking about media with bad dialogue, I mean, I'm no stranger to it. I love the first Life is Strange, and I'm not gonna be able to defend a single word of what they say. So Owen and Maddie, in my opinion, they aren't the only teenagers that say the most cringiest things in the world. And adding on all these things together, the film just sort of drags its feet all the way till the end. That weird feeling, that really weird feeling in my opinion, is what's made me just continuously think about this movie. Because here's the thing, the movie is technically categorized as a horror movie. Now, I really wouldn't say that because in honesty, I think there's only one scene in the movie that I would genuinely categorize as being terrifying, and that's the very, very end of the movie. And to get to that, let me say what this movie is an allegory for. This is a movie that is essentially a story about wanting to come out as a trans person, but maybe not believing it fully yourself, or maybe being too afraid to do it, too afraid of what others might think, or what you might think and the implications of what that means for you as a human being yourself. There's this fear that's planted everywhere in this movie. The Pink Opaque the entire time is actually not this fictional TV show that they watched as kids. It's the real life. And what they've been living in this world of suburban decay is just that dreamscape where they've been sent to die off in just the worst way possible. This is where their real selves die as they have to pretend to be completely different people. And that last scene with Owen, now just completely old and just given up on everything, the wheezing of their asthma just going off in the background, and then that yell that they give. Never have I seen a scene in a movie just completely reel me back into reality like that in a second. It was an astonishing move, and the second that the film ended, just dumbfounded. The theater that I was in was filled with people my age and younger, and I remember in the back just hearing a ton of people laugh. And I gotta be honest, I gave a little bit of a chuckle too. What the hell was that ending? And then I'd look over to the side, and then there was this couple that was definitely not very much gender conforming, and they just had this look of terror on their faces, and they were just still glued to their seats as they watched the credits roll. And I just realized that, damn, the film really just went there and did that. Owen's character is really, really interesting because the entire film, you know that this is a person that is too scared to confront who they really are. And at the very end, you get two very conflicting ideas. There's always time, and that there isn't enough time. The steady downfall of Owen's character is shown to us not visually, but is told to us by Owen themselves about having a family, about their dad dying, about them just continuously living their life until now we see them as this old person that is incredibly unhappy working at this arcade. Did they waste their life? Are they gonna do anything at the end? We don't have any answers for this. We can only guess. We can only hope that there's gonna be something that they do at the very end, but who's to say? Maddie was able to do it, and when they came back to try and save Owen, Owen was too scared to do anything. They were told that they were dying, because I'm pretty sure that's how everyone that's hiding like that, hiding their true selves feel, but they still were too afraid to do anything. This film for me, this scene, all of these different things, this felt to me like a huge wake-up call to just do something, anything. I know that this film is a trans allegory, but still, I feel like this message hits everywhere for everyone. Do what you need to do to be the realest version of yourself as possible. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't have enough time. And I would say you don't want to be like Owen in this movie, looking back at your life with just questions of what if. This is the choice that they decided to make, and it was a terrifying choice to witness on screen. But it's a choice that so many people choose to do because they're afraid of the reality of their situation. They're afraid of what other people think. They're afraid of what they might think in the long run. And I don't know, that imagery, that there is, I think, what I've been primarily thinking about for the last almost year now. I haven't rewatched this movie again, but I have bought the vinyl and I've kept that soundtrack just constantly going on and on and on. I just think that this is one of the most unique movies that I have seen in theaters possibly ever. And it's a movie that I just constantly love to just look back on and just think about. I feel like if I rewatch the movie and I see it in a completely different light, maybe it'll lose that effect, maybe it'll lose something. I'm afraid to go back and watch the movie just because of that. Because I have such a unique feeling towards it. It's like not a love, it's not a hate, but there are things that I both love and things that I don't like as much. This movie feels like a big creepypasta that was posted in the 2010s that I sat down and read, got chills and got scared, and decided never to read again. But I would also say that this also got me interested in watching other Jane Schoenbrun movies too. We're All Going to the World's Fair is on my list of movies that I need to watch because I've been told that that has a very similar feeling to this. And apparently these movies are all a part of a thematic trilogy that all have like the same kind of concept, themes, and feelings all joined together. Who knew that a movie that was gonna be so heavily influenced from 90s culture, like rock music, like the Smashing Pumpkins, and visuals like Goosebumps and other TV shows from that era, who knew that that was gonna cause such an inner split in me on whether or not I wanted to consider a movie to be good or bad? But this conflict of emotions, of opinions, is something that I greatly enjoy. It's a movie that I think of a lot, and regardless of what my final opinion of the movie is gonna be like, I will always be glad for it. But with that, I think that wraps up my thoughts on I Saw the TV Glow. What did you guys think about this? I haven't really gotten to talk to a lot of people about this movie because here in Florida, I don't think a lot of people have seen this movie. And I think more than ever now, that fear, that genuine fear that is instilled in these characters is probably ever more present with people just wanting to take away people's ability to be themselves. And that's just terrifying. My heart goes out to anyone that's in a situation that seems to be in a bit of a mess based on what's been going on. Based off that alone, I'm probably gonna be thinking about this movie just as much as I've been thinking about it before. But please, let me know down in the comments your thoughts on what you thought about it. As always, I was Randy, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.